Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people story. I started at this mid-sized software company that specialized in logistics management systems back in 2018. We weren't the biggest player in the market, but we had carved out a decent niche serving manufacturing clients who needed customized solutions. When I joined as a systems administrator, the infrastructure was a complete mess. Servers crashed weekly, backups were inconsistent, and the custom software our devs built had zero documentation. Over time, I quietly became the backbone of the entire operation. I rebuilt the server architecture, created redundancy systems, wrote documentation for all our proprietary software, and became the go-to person for our top clients. I wasn't just IT support, I was the one who understood how everything connected together. The developers built the software, but I was the one who kept it working in the real world, customized for each client's specific needs. "You're a wizard," my colleague Tom from sales would tell me whenever I fixed something that was supposedly impossible to fix. "I don't know how you do it." The truth was less magical. I just paid attention, created systems, and documented everything meticulously. I built custom scripts that automated most routine maintenance, created a knowledge base that nobody ever bothered to read, and developed strong relationships with our biggest clients who would specifically ask for me when they had issues. For years, I tried to get management to invest in cross-training. "What happens if I get hit by a bus?" I'd ask in meetings. The CTO would laugh and say, "Then we'd be screwed, so look both ways when crossing the street." Everyone would chuckle and nothing would change. Our company was doing well enough. Not setting the world on fire, but profitable and stable with around 50 employees and a decent client base. Then things changed last year when our founder decided to retire. He sold to a private equity firm that immediately brought in new management to optimize operations and drive growth. Enter my new boss. She arrived with an MBA from some prestigious university and absolutely zero practical knowledge about what our company actually did. Let's call her the department head. From day one, she made it clear she wasn't interested in understanding the technical aspects of our business. "I'm not here to get into the weeds," she told us in her first department meeting. "I'm here to streamline operations and identify inefficiencies." The way she said inefficiencies while looking around the room made it clear she thought we were the inefficiencies. She immediately started implementing changes that made no sense. She cut our server maintenance budget, saying we could extend hardware life cycles to improve capital efficiency. When I tried to explain that our older servers couldn't handle our growing client load, she just smiled condescendingly. "The problem isn't the hardware," she said, flipping through a spreadsheet. "It's resource utilization. According to industry benchmarks, we should be able to support twice the load with our current infrastructure. Those benchmarks don't account for our custom applications and specific client needs," I tried to explain. She cut me off with a wave of her hand. "Let's not get bogged down in technical minutia. The data is clear." The data wasn't clear. The data was garbage because she didn't understand what she was looking at, but she was determined to find cost efficiencies to impress her bosses. She implemented a new ticket system that actually made our work harder, cut our software license budget, and kept pushing for us to move everything to the cheapest cloud provider without understanding the migration complexities. Meanwhile, she took credit for every short-term cost saving while ignoring the growing technical debt. I knew I was in her crosshairs from the start. She'd make comments about my excessive time spent with clients, despite the fact that those relationships were what kept several major accounts with us. She questioned why systems maintenance took so long, suggesting that anyone with basic IT training could do this more efficiently. The breaking point came during budget reviews last quarter. I put together a detailed presentation showing how my department actually saved the company money through preventative maintenance, automation, and client retention. I included specific metrics on system uptime, response times, and the cost savings from the custom tools I'd built. I was halfway through when she interrupted me. "This is all very interesting," she said with that dismissive tone I'd come to hate, "but your department is consuming resources that could be better allocated elsewhere. The reality is that we're paying premium rates for routine IT functions that could be standardized and outsourced." "These aren't routine functions," I tried to explain. "Our clients rely on customized solutions that require specialized knowledge, and—" "I've heard enough," she cut me off. "The executive team and I have already made our decision." And that was it. She announced my position was being eliminated as part of a strategic restructuring to align resources with core business objectives. I was to be escorted out that day with no transition period, no knowledge transfer, just turn in my badge and clear out my desk. As security walked me to the door, she had the audacity to say, "Don't worry, we'll manage just fine. IT functions are easily transferable." I didn't argue. What was the point? I simply said, "Good luck," and walked out. I didn't sabotage anything. I didn't need to. I just left all my knowledge and systems exactly where they had always been, in my head and in documentation nobody had bothered to read. I had spent years building custom solutions that kept everything running smoothly, but nobody had ever taken the time to understand how it all worked together. The first sign of trouble came 3 days later when Tom texted me. "The client portal is down and nobody knows how to fix it. Did you leave instructions somewhere?" I had in fact written a detailed guide on the portal maintenance, stored on the company wiki that nobody ever checked. I didn't respond. A week after that, our biggest client's custom integration failed during their monthly inventory sync. Another text from Tom, more desperate this time. "They're threatening to cancel their contract. Nobody understands how the integration works. Please, man, can you give me a hint at least?" Again, all the documentation existed, but it was buried in a system that nobody knew how to navigate except me. I had offered to train others multiple times, but my boss had always said it wasn't a priority. By week 3, the chaos was in full swing. System outages were happening daily. The outsourced IT firm they'd hired to replace me was completely overwhelmed, with no understanding of our custom systems. Clients were furious, with several threatening to leave. Meanwhile, I wasn't exactly struggling. Within 2 weeks of being let go, I had 4 job offers from companies in the same industry who recognized my specialized skills. I accepted a position with a competitor at a 30% higher salary, better benefits, and a clear path to advancement. The real turning point came a month after my departure. The CTO himself called me, sounding exhausted. "Look, I'm going to be straight with you. We're in trouble. Nothing works right, clients are leaving, and we can't figure out half the systems you built. We need your help." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said neutrally. I did try to warn everyone about the need for cross-training. I know, he sighed. "That's on us. The department head convinced the board your position was redundant, but she was completely wrong. We need you back." "I've already accepted another position," I told him. "What if we brought you on as a consultant, just to help us transition and document everything properly?" I almost laughed. "What rate did you have in mind?" When he named a figure lower than my original salary, I did laugh. "I'm afraid that won't work," I said. "My consulting rate is $250 an hour, with a minimum 20-hour weekly commitment for at least 2 months. He choked a little, but didn't immediately refuse. "Let me take that to the board." 2 days later, he called back. They agreed to my terms. It turned out that they had lost 2 major clients already and were on the verge of losing more. The cost of bringing me back was less than the cost of losing those accounts. When I walked back into the office as a consultant, the atmosphere was tense. The department head tried to act like my return was her idea all along. "We've decided to bring you back to help with the transition," she told me in front of the team, trying to maintain her authority. "You'll be reporting to me on the documentation project." "Actually," I corrected her calmly, "according to my consulting agreement, I report directly to the CTO and have full autonomy to implement the necessary systems and training programs." The look on her face was priceless. She clearly hadn't been informed of the details of my contract. Over the next few weeks, I methodically documented everything, trained staff members, and stabilized the systems. I took my time, billing those hours at my premium rate, knowing that every minute was a reminder to the company of how badly they had miscalculated. The department head was increasingly sidelined as it became clear to everyone how little she understood about the actual operations. In meetings, she would try to assert control, only to be contradicted by the reality of the situation. "We should prioritize migrating to the cloud provider I originally selected," she insisted during one meeting. "That provider doesn't support the custom API integrations our 3 largest clients require," I pointed out. "Making that change would cost us those accounts, which represent approximately 40% of our annual revenue." The CTO and other executives started deferring to me instead of her. Her cost-saving initiatives were exposed as the disasters they were. The final blow came when the CEO called a meeting to review the financial impact of my departure and return. The numbers were stark. In the 6 weeks I was gone, the company had lost 2 major clients worth $1.5 million in annual recurring revenue. Emergency fixes by the outsourced IT firm had cost over $100,000. The stock price had dropped 15% due to client dissatisfaction and system reliability issues. The decision to eliminate this position, the CEO said, looking directly at the department head, has cost this company nearly $2 million in just 6 weeks, not including the premium we're now paying for consulting services that we previously had in-house. The department head tried to defend herself, but the damage was done. 2 weeks later, she was gone, officially departing to pursue other opportunities. As my consulting contract neared its end, the CEO asked to meet with me privately. "We've made a terrible mistake," he admitted. "We've realized how valuable you are to this company. We'd like to offer you a permanent position again as Director of Technical Operations, reporting directly to me. Double your previous salary, plus stock options and a seat on the executive committee." It was tempting, I'll admit. The money was good, and there was something satisfying about the complete reversal. But I had already seen how this company operated under pressure. "I appreciate the offer," I told him, "but I'm happy with my new position. They value my expertise and have built knowledge sharing into their culture from the ground up. In my new job, I wasn't just the person who kept things running. I was actively involved in strategic decisions, mentoring junior staff, and building systems designed to be understood and maintained by teams, not individuals. I worked reasonable hours, received recognition for my contributions, and had a clear advancement path." The CEO looked genuinely disappointed. "Is there anything we could offer to change your mind?" "No," I said simply. "But I'm happy to finish the knowledge transfer and recommend some good candidates who might fit the role." And that's what I did. I completed my contract professionally, ensuring the company had all the documentation and training they needed. I recommended a former colleague who was looking for a new challenge, who eventually took the position at the elevated salary and authority level. As for the department head, I heard through industry contacts that she struggled to find another executive position after the word got out about her disastrous tenure. She eventually took a much lower-level management role at a smaller company. My new employer has since poached 2 more of my former colleagues and one of my former company's clients. Not because I orchestrated it, but because word gets around about where talent is valued and where it isn't. The irony isn't lost on me that by trying to cut costs by eliminating my position, the company ended up spending far more than they ever would have by simply recognizing my value in the first place. They paid my enormous consulting fees, lost clients, suffered reputation damage, and ultimately had to create a higher-paid position to replace me anyway. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if they had just listened to me years earlier when I asked for cross-training and proper recognition of how critical these systems were. The company might be in a much stronger position today, but that's not my problem anymore. I'm earning 35% more than I was before, working fewer hours, receiving regular recognition, and actually using my vacation time. My new company even sends me to industry conferences to keep my skills current, something my former employer always considered an unnecessary expense. The best revenge isn't about getting back at people who undervalued you. It's moving somewhere your contributions are appreciated and watching from a distance as reality catches up with those who didn't. The next one is a pro-revenge story. My buddy is an accountant. He has his own firm. His biggest clients are small to medium-sized businesses. Well, he had a client who owned 4 different clubs, bars in 2 different cities. Client was always shady, always slow on payment, etc. I was also a customer of one of the bars. They had poker game that I would play in on Thursdays. Well, one day I'm at my buddy's house having a few beers and he's idioting about non-payment from a client. I ask who, he doesn't want to say, but it's really bugging him because it's a significant chunk of change. He then says the name, we'll call him Scott. I'm like, wow, Scott isn't paying you? He then says Scott is saying business is way down, and I think that's odd. I've been going to one Scott place and every Thursday is packed. My buddy looks at me and goes, "Really?" I go, "Yeah, he does this new cash discount. Think 15% off your tab if you pay cash." My buddy goes, "Really?" I tell him about my experience at Scott Bar, and eventually the topic changes. A few weeks later, my buddy calls me up and says, "You going to Scott's Bar to play poker?" I said, "Yay." He says, "Can I join?" I go, "Sure." He joins, we get a few drinks in us, lose our money at poker. My house is closer, he decides to crash there. On the way over, he breaks down his theory. He thinks Scott is vastly underreporting his revenue. The reason why he suspects Scott is offering cash discount is cause cash is easier to hide. He says he's going to do a deep dive on Scott's finances. My friend tells me his plan is to go all 4 of Scott's establishments, get the prices he charges at each place, pieces together how much alcohol he's buying versus how much Scott is saying his revenue equates to. He looks up how much Scott is paying in payroll, rent, bills, etc. Keep in mind, he has access to all this info, and he determines that Scott is basically using his credit card receipts plus a little bit of cash to cover his cost of his business to include rent, payroll, insurance, liquor, food, etc. However, based upon the amount of products he's selling, he's suspecting Scott is underreporting his total income by about 35%, 40%. He goes back into Scott's books even more, and he figures in the last year, Scott has been underreporting his sales by 35%, 40%, but he's also been underreporting his sales by at least 20%, 25% for years on end. Simply put, there is no way Scott is going through as much product, and as much alcohol as he's purchasing and having the revenue numbers that he's claiming. He's underreporting his sales to his accountant, which means he's also underreporting his earnings to the IRS. By this point, Scott owes my friend thousands of dollars that he hasn't paid. He said his total amount owed could buy a brand new motorcycle. He never gave me an exact number. My friend decides duck getting repayment from Scott. Let's get repayment from the IRS through the whistleblower program. He's estimating Scott's underreported his revenue by millions of dollars over the course of years. The whistleblower fees he'd earn from the IRS far outweighs the amount Scott owes him. The IRS will pay between 15 to 30% of what they collect. So with the assistance of a lawyer, my friend gathers all the evidence he has Scott's underreporting to the IRS and files a whistleblower report with the IRS. During this time, my friend fires Scott as a client for non-payment. Now this part gets boring because there's a lot of legal wrangling and back and forth. This went back and forth. However, eventually the IRS comes down on Scott and they come down hard. It's estimated that Scott underreported his income to the IRS by about $4.5 million. Now, my friend never told me how much the IRS was able to recoup, but Scott's businesses are no longer his businesses, and $4.5 million would put the whistleblower reward at $675,000. $1.3 million. Keep in mind it's based on what the IRS collects, not the amount that's reported. I've asked my friend how much he got in the end, and he simply says, I no longer have a mortgage, and it would have been much cheaper for Scott to just pay me. The next one is a malicious compliances story. So this happened a good 6 years ago now. I was just starting my IT career, so I was a basic level 1 desktop engineer for a large financial company. My team consisted of me, a level 2 engineer, and 3 managers. 1 for data, 1 for people, and 1 overall manager. Parking in town was either expensive or impossible, and while management and supervisors got parking spaces in the huge multi-story next to the office, other staff members didn't get one, and either had to pay the very expensive parking fees or park far away and walk. Being on a low entry-level salary, I opted to walk the 30 minutes into town, and often got sick due to bad weather. The level 2 guy lived a 5-minute walk from the office and didn't own a car. When any of the managers were off, they offered their parking space to me so that I wouldn't have to walk, which was very nice of them and greatly appreciated as it was saving me money too. One day I got called into HR because somebody saw me coming out of the multi-story and got jealous and asked why I get a space and they don't. This HR manager was incredibly condescending and talked to me like I was a literal child with lines like, "Back when I was your age, I thought the world owed me everything too," which is absolutely not my attitude, but sure, go off on one like you know me. She said it wasn't fair on the level 2 guy because he might want the space too. She wouldn't listen when I said he didn't drive, and even said to me he didn't want it after I asked if he was okay with me using the space. At the end of the day, I went into the management office and we were chatting about the day as we usually did, and I told them about the HR meeting and said they weren't allowed to let me use their space anymore. The data manager then had a genius MC suggestion. She was a very selfless soul who sacrificed much of her time to help other people, and this situation rubbed her the wrong way, and she wanted to do something out of spite. She said that whenever any of them were on holiday, they'd just tell me that their parking space will be empty for the duration, not specifically that I can use it, which is what we were told not to do from HR. So the next time they were on holiday, I parked in their space, and after a few days somebody else got jealous and tattled to HR again. I was dragged into a meeting and asked why I was still using their space. I said that I just took a chance on an empty space I found in the multi-story. They were rented, not pay and display. She went and asked the data manager when she was back in if she said I could use the space, to which she said, "No, I just said goodbye before I went on holiday for 2 weeks. HR then told her I was in her space in her absence and asked her if she wanted to raise a complaint against me. She said no thanks, I wasn't using it anyway. Their hands were tied, and there was nothing they could do to prevent me from using the spaces as they're allocated privately to the individuals for use even outside of office hours and only reclaimed when they leave. The next one is an entitled people story. I attended a small Christian university roughly 20 years ago. It was actually accredited and offered a good education. Honestly, the professors and staff were really good overall, but oh dear, sweet flying spaghetti monster, the students. It was like a magnet for entitled brats. My first year, I hadn't made many friends. I'm an introvert and was painfully shy at the time, so putting myself out there was hard. As a result, I ended up with a roommate my second year that I didn't know. Let's call him Jake, not real name. Jake was a bully. Most of my life, I think I walked around with a bully me sign on my back, as it was a pretty constant thing in my childhood and early adult life. He'd randomly take things, question every choice I made, and talk down about my studies. He also had a friend, Mark, not real name, who was maybe worse. He was also a bully. Guy was a checklist of all the worst aspects of religious fanatics. Arrogant, a hypocrite, and seemed to want power and influence, so was aiming to become a pastor. Both were pretty relentless in bullying me. They said they wouldn't if I stood up for myself, but when I did, I quickly found out that they could dish it out but couldn't take it. They'd interrupt my studies and sleep constantly, and it was the first time I'd seriously contemplated suicide. I ended up spending most of my time anywhere that wasn't my dorm. I have a lot of stories about them, but for now, I'll focus on one each. Mark liked to play video games with us, mostly Smash Bros. He was always cocky, and he was a better player than me, who prefers to play PvE games. Punish me from soft. Trash talk was common, but neither of them could take what they could dish out. One time, we were playing with a group and I actually managed to win. I was in the zone and felt pretty good, until Mark opened his mouth. Mark, I lost to OP? Man, I was playing terribly. Me. Well, maybe God wanted to see you humbled. Yes. I sucked at burns back then. Mark. Well, he's gonna love when you get punched in the face. One of the other players gave a whoa as he'd essentially threatened violence. Over a video game. Because he lost once. I guess I was feeling annoyed since he was being dismissive of me and had basically said I deserved to get punched. Me. You get annoyed with us for cursing and you basically said you want me to get punched. Mark starts on some lecture about how cursing is against God when the same guy who had given the whoa before just said, Mark, shut the duck up. I couldn't help it. I laughed my ass off. Mark just sat there kinda unable to say anything. Guy later told me he got a lecture from Mark for cursing, but said it was well worth it. Mark had a bevy of other entitled moments. Slut-shaming a friend of mine for letting him touch her, entering people's rooms without asking and using their stuff, and several instances of refusing to pay people back. Now, Jake. This one is secondhand, but I trust the sources. Jake wasn't as religious at the time. While I was back home for a weekend, he apparently decided to go out drinking. Now, being a religious school, this was a big no-no. He'd actually gotten into trouble for this before, but he felt it was a stupid rule, so he wasn't going to follow it. I should note he was underage for where we lived at the time. Anyway, he came into the common area blitzed. Two of my friends were watching a film and he just kinda sat down, tossing his keys on the table. After a bit, he started to vomit and they fetched the RA on duty at the time. This particular RA was a really good guy, kind of person who'd go out of his way to make sure everyone was doing well and help out with any issues. When he saw Jake, he asked if he needed any help, water, etc. Jake wasn't having it though. He told everyone to duck off, he was leaving, and went for his keys. The RA likely would let the drinking slip since he was more concerned for his well-being, but he wasn't about to let someone drink and drive. He reached out to grab the keys and Jake punched him across the face. I don't have many details about what happened after that, but I got a call letting me know my roommate was being kicked out of the school and that he was not permitted to come on campus anymore. This actually led to a lot of problems for me since they suspected I knew and was hiding it. I told them I avoided being in that room as much as possible, which friends and the library staff confirmed, but it did cost me becoming an RA since the higher-ups still weren't sure about me. Fortunately, Mark had to leave school after that year because his parents were not going to fund him with his poor grades and Jake was banned from campus. Mark, who had wanted to become a minister, thankfully never was appointed to any church leadership. Jake is actually a sad story as he spiraled and ended up homeless for a long time. He's now every bit the religious zealot Mark was. Things were better for me after this. I found my people on campus, mostly in my major, as well as others who took Love Thy Neighbor much more seriously. After graduating, I ended up working overseas, deconverting, getting help I need for my mental disorder, and finding some of the best friends I've ever known. Wouldn't be my last encounter with an entitled bully, but I'm better and handling it now. All this to say, if you're planning to attend a small religious college, well, maybe consider some alternatives. I'm not saying religion is bad, but if my experience is any indication, your faith is better served elsewhere. The next one is an entitled parent story. I, 25 female, and my fiancé, 25 male, found out we were pregnant in early January. We unfortunately miscarried and found out the baby had no heartbeat on February 26th. For about 2 weeks after that, I was physically going through a miscarriage, which meant bleeding a lot, passing the rest of fetal remains, tissue, and mentally being distraught. I cried for a week straight. We lived in a different state from our family, so we were basically going through this alone. As soon as we found out about the miscarriage, my fiancé told my parents and then told his mother. His mother was excited about becoming a grandmother and whatnot. I'm not sure how that phone call went, but presumably it went fine. However, the next day he was receiving text messages from distant family members sending their condolences or whatnot. Immediately we knew she had been telling people. I told my fiancé that he should at least tell his dad, parents are divorced, and siblings before his mom gets to them. Once he called them to tell the news, they all already knew. Everybody. This honestly pissed me off. I do not think it is her place to share this news, and also, she never texted me. She never called me to ask how I'm doing or anything. I felt like something so personal that I was experiencing was reduced to basically some sort of gossip. My fiancé texted her, "Why are you telling everybody?" And she just ignored that message. She never tried to call him either. He decided to just ignore her as well because she would text him periodically random stuff like her flight info if she was flying, but again, it was just random stuff. Whatever. Fast forward to a few weeks ago, we decided to just plan our wedding since we've been engaged for 3 years, lol. I sent out our save the dates, which she has not responded to or asked us about. I felt that this would be the perfect opportunity for her to reach out and IDK be a mother. A couple days ago, she FaceTimes my fiancé, but he was working, so he called her back the next day. We thought she was finally going to ask about the wedding, or maybe say sorry. Nope. She was just calling because she was on vacation and wanted to show him some stuff. This annoyed my fiancé, and he said, "Oh, I thought you were going to apologize." And she said, "I never saw that message." My fiancé said, "Okay, well, you still told everyone when it wasn't your place to," and she said, "I only told your dad and sister," which was a complete lie since distant family on her side were texting us. My fiancé just hangs up because he can't take the lies. She then texts him, "You know what, I'm so sorry that you feel some type of way or some type of victims, because I feel the way I feel about losing the excitement in being a grandma. It's unfortunate that you feel the need to punish me for my feelings. These are your choices. I'm not a bad person. Clearly you feel otherwise. That is your opinion. Sorry for not being what you expect on a mother." Ma'am, we kinda are the victims? Does she really think she's the victim? LOL. Whatever she felt, we felt it 20x. At this point, I really hope she doesn't make it to the wedding because she's just drama. It's incredible how some people are. Edit. She's done so many things that I can go on and on about, but just so you all can get a general idea, she has an identical twin sister that she hasn't spoken to in 3 years because her twin could not take her to the airport one day. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.